Sondra Slomine, I want to thank all of you for being here today to remember her. While everybody who knew her is mourning her loss, in particular at this moment of memory, our hearts go out to her son Kenny with his wife Gail, her daughter Karen with her husband Larry, her grandchildren Keith, Jay, John with his wife Sue, and Sydney, her great-grandchildren Jared, Bradley, Jed, Zoe, and Penny, her sisters Sheila with her husband Tom, and Maxine with her husband Randy, her brother-in-law Arthur, her sister-in-law Mary. Her whole family is comforted and strengthened by your presence here today. In your rows you will find green prayer books. These are the books that we'll be using for many of the readings today. We begin on page 270. On page 270 we find Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm, will guard your soul. Adonai will guard your going and coming, now and forever. Let's turn back to page 238. O God of the spirits of all flesh, you are close to the hearts of the sorrowing, to strengthen and console them with the warmth of your love and with the assurance that the human spirit is enduring and indestructible. Even as we pray for perfect peace for those whose lives have ended, so do we ask you to give comfort and courage to the living. May the knowledge of your nearness be our strength, O God, for you are with us at all times, in joy and sorrow, in light and darkness, in life and death. On page 240, we find the words to the 23rd Psalm. Let's join together. A Song of David. Adonai, you are my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Back on page 238, we find a selection from Psalm 90. Adonai, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains were born, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. For in your sight 1,000 years are as yesterday when it has passed, as a watch in the night. You engulf us in sleep. We are like grass that renews itself. In the morning, it blossoms renewed. In the evening, fades and withers. The span of our life is 70 years, or with strength, 80 years. But the best of those years have trouble and sorrow. They pass by speedily, and we fly away. Teach us to number our days, that we may attain a heart of wisdom. Let your deeds be seen by your servants, your splendor upon their children. May your favor, Adonai our God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Establish the work of our hands. This psalm tells us to number our days so that we may attain a heart of wisdom. The lesson is that we should focus on every day, making the most of every moment we have. It's not really a reminder to count our days so much as it is a reminder to make our days count. It seems to me that Sondra lived by this rule. She had a thirst for life. She loved to play mahjong. She loved to travel. She loved to cook or to tell other people how to cook for her. She loved going to the theater, other cultural events. She planned fundraisers for her Temple Beth Am, helping to build up that community. She wanted to be active, doing the things that she enjoyed. When she knew that her health would prevent her from living that way, she knew that it was time for her to let go. She wanted to live her life, not merely to exist. She wanted her days to count. This psalm also tells us that the span of our life is 70 years, or with strength, 80 years. So what can we say about the strength of a woman who exceeded even the measure of strength by 5 years? She was strong. She was the matriarch of her family. She often put other people's needs before her own. She was a caretaker. She cared for her parents. She cared for her sisters. She cared for her beloved Marty, to whom she was married for over 55 years. The proof of her strength is in the last line of the psalm, which asks that God establish the work of our hands. Through her strength, through her zest for life, she established a legacy that lives on in the memories of everyone who knew her, especially her family, her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. They will remember her and carry on in her honor, and thus she will continue to be an established blessing and an inspiration every day. Let's turn to page 236. To everything there is a season, a time for everything under the sun, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to laugh and a time to cry, a time to dance and a time to mourn, a time to seek and a time to lose. This is the time we remember those who gave meaning to our lives. This is the time we remember the bonds that tied us together, the love that we shared, and the memories that remain with us still. To help us to remember, some people have prepared to speak today. Our first speaker is her daughter, Karen.
Today, we are here to honor the memory of mother, sister, and grandmother, aunt, and great friend. My mother was a very interesting person, as you know. She was brutally honest and forthright in her opinions of life and the people that she was close to. She always let you know just what she thought and proved to be right on her views of people and the world. Growing up as a child, I will always remember the fun and laughter in our home. Sondra had immense energy and was always working on some project. Whether perfecting her wonderful cooking or the interior decorating of our house in Roslyn, she was definitely there. One time, she decided to change the color scheme of our house, and I'm thinking this is probably in the 60s. And my mother decided to make the house, I guess it was like red and pink, and she decided to make it cranberry. She started painting the furniture in her bedroom, my parents' bedroom, and she had so much paint left over that she painted everything else, including the lamps, the walls, small objects, anything that she could find, she painted cranberry. So when my brother and I came home from school, we sort of didn't recognize that bedroom. My father loved my mother so much that no matter what crazy antics my mother would do, he didn't care. He just let her go. When I was a junior in high school, my mother decided to go back to work and started a new career. And it was in a fancy ladies' dress shop. She became a vital part of the store, outselling all her colleagues and even the owner of the store. Women all over eastern Montgomery County came to see Sondra for her style, her honesty, and her impeccable taste. She always would tell me that a lot of men would come into the store asking her to dress their wives. Like if they went on cruises or if they had something special, they always asked Sondra to dress their wives. Sondra was so great at her job at Evelyn Megerman's, that was her boss. Her boss started to take her to New York City on buying trips. And when Evelyn got sick and passed away, my mother managed and ran the store for many years. My parents, Sondra and Marty, had an incredible marriage. They loved and respected each other. They argued like most young couples early on in their marriage. They were only 19 and 20 when they married, but they always made up. Most of the time, my brother Kenny and I saw them hugging and kissing each other and laughing about life's joys. They were my first glimpse of what a great relationship could be. Marty and Sondra were married 55 years. I know that they were an inspiration to everybody that came around them. Sondra and Marty had a great life together. They went out every Saturday night of their lives, going to parties, dinner dances, and the theater. They loved to drink martinis and drink wine, and they had many lifelong friends. My parents also loved to travel, and they went on trips to Europe. They went on cruises, and they went all through the Caribbean and Hawaii. Sondra and Marty were the best parents and grandparents. They were always there for you when you needed them. When I went on vacations, Sydney was well taken care of, moving into my home to spend time with her. They took care of their grandson's PB&J as well. Sondra and Marty were the best grandparents involved in the kid's life, going on trips to Washington, D.C., or the Jersey Shore, or taking Sydney to Disney World. As life went on, my mother became a caretaker. She took care of her elderly parents, Jack and Jeanette. She was always there for them, making sure they had everything that they needed, with much love and affection. She also took care of her three aunts, Edith, Irene, and Kitty, who were my grandfather's sisters. They never had children, so my mother and my two aunts, Maxine and Sheila, were like their children. And when the time came, my my mother also took care of the Queen Ants. She never complained and always said when trouble came and it got hard, and I quote, she always said this to me, "I have broad shoulders, I can take it all." I had a great teacher. She taught me an important lesson, to be strong and brave and to accept what life throws you with style and grace. When my father got sick 11 years ago, Sondra nursed and loved him till the very end. What a role model for me to see her once again in that nurturing, loving, and all-encompassing role as a great wife. After 4 months, when my father passed away, she made a life for herself in Longboat Kid, showing her strength for living life to the fullest. I only hope that I have a little bit of her capacity to take out of life the joy and love she brought to herself and everyone she touched. I also want to thank you all for the love and kind support you have given me and my family this year. And thank you for being here today and remembering my mother, Sondra. And I just have, and I would like to read that poem. I left it. I just would like to read it. A friend of mine sent me. He couldn't be here today. A real short little card with something really beautiful. What if the brilliant twinkling stars that bring the dark night sky to life are windows looking out of heaven? And at the very moment when we are wishing on those stars, hoping that the loved ones we have lost are happy and safe and free, maybe looking at those same stars from the other side, making the same wish for us, sending us all their love. And that's what I wish for every day, that my mother and father and my other relatives can look down on us and know that we're happy and safe, and vice versa. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. And now we invite her son-in-law, Larry.
She wants to go first.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
My name is Sondra Slomine. I'm here today with my husband Arthur, my 2 stepdaughters Amy and Beth, and their children, to honor the memory of Sondra Slomine. Sondra was my sister-in-law, my mentor, on some occasions my mother-in-law, and also a friend for 31 years. She was the one person that I could go to in my moments of sadness and joy. I always believed that Sondra grew up in an era when women got married, had their children, and were supposed to be happy to stay home and support their husband's plans and ideas for their life. Sondra was crazy about her husband Marty. She loved her 2 children, Karen and Kenny, deeply, but she always marched to her own drum. She had a busy, event-filled life, but she always found time to help with her family, including mine, whenever we needed her the most. Some examples of the things that Sondra did for us over the years. She was the person who got her seamstress to make me a veil for my wedding. She also found me a florist that, with my limited price range, made me beautiful settings for my table. When we were looking for someone to marry us, she of course found a cantor. And when Sondra told me, you know, you can't have any kids at your wedding, they would be very distracting, Art and I ignored her and we have our kids anyway. One of the other examples that she did at a very difficult time in my life was she and her beloved Marty left my mother's funeral very early to arrange with the caterer to have all the food delivered to her house in Bluebell. And she had to check on the caterer to make sure that everything was correct and everyone was very well fed. Every year she was the one who went with Artie and I to the cemetery at the New Year to put stones in the graves of those we loved and lost. In the years that she's been in Florida, going without her, not getting her directions, not being guided, not being told where to walk, not being told what stones to pick, just isn't the same. Over the last few weeks, I was thinking of a word to describe my Sondra. we were with her in February, this word came to my mind. She was invincible. She could not be overcome or mastered. You never subdued Sondra, she subdued you. She had an unyielding spirit. Her great love was her Marty, but also her Kenny and her Karen. Her wonderful sisters, Maxine and Sheila. And of course her grandkids, Kiwi, Jay, Sydney, and John. If you were under her wing, you could do no wrong. Nothing could ever affect you. I believe that Sondra could have solved the Middle East conflict if only they had let her in on the negotiations and locked the participants in a room with her until they all compromised. Sondra, I know you're listening today. Your two great gifts were love and courage. The courage to go on, just like you did when Marty died, and love that you gave so freely and so passionately right up till the end. Thank you.
Now we'll
Can everyone hear me? I speak softly. I just want to speak about one aspect of Sondra. Because Sondra had a serious side, and it's a side that she was often reluctant to show. She had a very, very strong sense of gratitude for the things that life had brought and inspired her. The Talmud defines gratitude as recognizing the good that is already yours. She was very grateful for her children, Kenny and Karen, her grandchildren, their children, most grateful for her family and friends too numerous to mention. She was even actually grateful to care for her parents in the later years. She was grateful for the little things like mahjong and of course a great dinner cocktail. But most of all, she was grateful for her companion in that libation. Most of all, she was grateful for Marty. Even after Marty passed, there wasn't just Sondra, there wasn't just Marty. There was always Sondra and Marty. What all of this gracious did was to honor all of those that loved and knew her and that she knew and loved. As I know she would honor all of those of you here today. A famous old rabbi summed up Sondra's attitude towards life, and I quote, "Gratitude rejoices with her sister joy and is always ready to light a candle and have a party." And need I say more about Sondra? Sondra and Marty knew how to party and revel in that joy and the joy that was brought to them and those around them. It was a joy that was really in the depth of Sondra's soul. And I have a little poem in the spirit of Sondra. It's when you're real good. Once for each thing, just once, no more. And we too just once, and never again. But to have been this thing once completely, even if only once, to have been at one with the earth seems beyond definition.
Now we'd like to ask if anybody else would like to share a memory or a story about Sondra. If anyone else would like to speak, please.
Just have to say, Sondra is my nearest, dearest friend. She was my nearest, dearest friend. To this day, I will love her forever. When she and Marty said, go back where you came from, and we did, we went back to Philadelphia. But what I really wanted to say, when Sondra and I were about 12 years old, I was visiting my brother at his apartment on Grange Street, and along came Sondra in her two-wheeler bicycle. From far away, I still remember what she was wearing. A sheer glass, flowers all over her, and my brother said, Margie, that doesn't even look like her. I said, no, it doesn't, but I think it really is. She came close, and she had red hair. And I said, when did you do that? Oh, she said last night, it's ox blood shoe polish. I shall never forget that. That was typical.
Anybody else?
I didn't prepare anything because I wasn't sure if I could do this, but I feel I would be remiss if I didn't say something. Aunt Sondra was like a great force in my life, always. Of course, I'm not her daughter, so I didn't mind all the, crap she would say. I could leave and go home, but, and she was just always there for me, and just great, and a real force of nature, and just so giving all the time. And, when I had Margie, my oldest, everybody brought baby gifts to the hospital. But Aunt Sondra brought me an outfit so I would wear the right thing home from the hospital, which was really nice of her to think of me, And when I got my first paycheck, I went right to Memoriam to buy an outfit because I was so happy and proud that I could, look nice. And I walked in, I'd been at work all day, and I was already married, and I walked in, and she always called me Lori Peterson. She said, Lori Peterson, what are you wearing? You look like an orphan. Get in here. And she outfitted me from top to bottom. I'm sure she paid for half the clothes. And it was really nice of her. And then when I remember when Craig was working all the time or studying or whatever, I brought Margie and Scott to their pool at the Wingcoat house. And I called her last minute. I said, everything to do. She said, come over. I'll pack a lunch. And sure enough, I show up, and down at the pool, she has a little bag, a brim, I'm going to call it, with juice boxes, tuna fish, crackers, fruit, cookies. Uncle Marty had my kids in the pool all afternoon. It was so nice. I think she played Go Fish with Margie, and she was just always, I was always welcome there, and she was just really, really so giving. And you're right, she always said she had broad shoulders and could handle anything. She really taught me a lot about everything, and I really, really am going to miss her a lot. So I'm glad that she was in my life for as long as she was. I was really lucky to have her.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Aunt Sondra was my godmother, and what a godmother she was. Right out was bewitched. When nobody said it yet, but I don't know how the one word you wouldn't say to describe Aunt Sondra as fabulous, because everything was fabulous. You could have the worst day ever, and you just talk to Aunt Sondra.